Hi, Chad here with Purple Collar Life. In today's video, we're going to talk about this Cub Cadet 1210 hydrostatic garden tractor. That's right, garden tractor. I'm always really impressed by these garden tractors of the 1970s and 1980s. When you think about it, these 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18 horsepower machines did a lot of work. These were the compact tractors of their day. They did snow blowing, snow plowing, rototilling, three-point attachments, mowing, added wheel weights, fluid in the wheels, chains on the tires. These garden tractors were amazing, not only of the 70s and 80s, but remain amazing today, 50 years later. Anytime I see one of these old garden tractors go for sale, I like to take a look at it on Facebook Marketplace. I love the old Cub Cadets, whether it was the IH kind or the early MTD years like this one. I like the wheel horse, I like the John Deere, I like the case, the Ingersoll case tractors I think are amazing. Like I said, these garden tractors are very impressive to me. So let's take a good look at this Cub Cadet 1210. We'll talk about what I was looking for, what you should be looking for if you're looking at a garden tractor like this, and some things about this machine that really impressed me. If you look at it, it's not going to win any beauty contests, but I can tell this is a good tractor, and I'll show you why. We'll talk a little bit about how to run it, how to mow with it, how to start it and operate it. So let's get started. So if you're not familiar with these Cub Cadet tractors, in the 70s, they were usually 3-digit model numbers. So for example, 149, 129, 128, 148, 169. And what those meant, the first 2 digits are the horsepower. So if you're looking at a 129, that's 12 horsepower. 128 is 12 horsepower. 169, 16 horsepower. Then the third digit indicated whether it was a manual transmission or hydrostatic. In those particular models, the 8 meant manual transmission, so a 128 would be 12 horsepower manual transmission, whereas a 149 would be 14 horsepower, and the 9 indicating the hydrostatic transmission. After those series came the quiet line series. They were 4 digits long, so like a 1450, a 1250. The 50 indicated hydrostatic, the 12 and the 14 indicated horsepower. Just after that series in the 1980s, this 1986 Cub Cadet 1210, the 12 indicates horsepower, the 10 indicates it's hydrostatic, but does not have hydraulic lift. Now, a unique thing about these 1210s is they came with headlights, which was not usual for a 10 or 12 horsepower machine of its day. Now it's starting to rain here, so let's go ahead and go over the starting procedure of this. We'll pull it in the garage and talk more about it in the garage. To start, foot always has to be on the brake unless you've disabled that switch, which I do not recommend. I don't mind having my foot on the brake to start it. Down here is the choke. Pull out for choke on. Over here to the right is the key. Here is my throttle control, just to the right of the steering wheel. Further right to the steering wheel. Further right of the steering wheel is my hydrostatic control. Notice that when my foot's on the brake, it cannot move up or down. When my foot's off the brake, it can move up. But when I push my foot onto the brake, it'll put me back into neutral. So foot on the brake. So foot on the brake. I'll give it a little bit of choke, a little bit of throttle, and turn the key. Push the throttle in. We're going to go ahead and pull this thing in the garage. One of the things to look for if you're looking at one of these old Cub Cadets or any old garden tractor is check the electronics. You want to make sure your amp gauge works, shows you that it's charging. That's important. So whether it's a starter generator combined unit on one of the older models or a unit like this, you can tell when that battery's charging when the engine's running. You can also make sure you've got lights. It's important to make sure you have running lights. That just indicates that the electrical system is good, and it's always nice to have lights both front and back. On this machine, I'm impressed to tell you the front lights and the back lights, all 4 work. Now I do have the tractor running right now. You'll look at the amp gauge there and see that as I increase the throttle, we are charging the battery. When I turn down the key here, turn the lights on, you'll see it is using some battery power. Lights off, lights on. Now let's talk a little bit about hours. You can see this particular machine has 1,772 hours. Some people might say, oh my goodness, 1,700 hours, you're crazy for buying that machine. I'm not worried that much about hours. And the reason is, as long as I can see good maintenance records, I believe that the machine has been taken care of. And as long as I've seen that oil changes are regularly done, and I can tell by looking at it that someone's taking care of this machine, I'm not as worried about hours. Now, 1,700 hours may seem like a lot. I have seen some of these machines where you're over the 2,000 or even the 3,000 hour mark on a gasoline engine. One of the things that does worry me is if I see really low hours. So if I see 100, 200, 300 hours on a machine that's built in the 1970s or 1980s, that A, makes me wonder if it's rolled over, and B, makes me wonder if they haven't run it that much. And it's actually not great for a machine to not run very often. That can cause as many problems as running it hard too much. So while we're here, let's go over these controls. Right down here was that choke that I pulled out to start. Beside it, you've got two fuses. One is for the ignition and running and the PTO. The other is for the lights. So if you have lights that aren't working, check that fuse to see if it's either missing or blown. Right down here is your key. Just up here on the dash, this is our electronic PTO. So this is the difference between the newer Cub Cadets, I say newer from the 80s, and the older Cub Cadets from the 70s. The 70s Cub Cadets have a manually engaging PTO, so it's a lever you push forward, and these ones have an electronic engaging PTO. You just pull out on this little switch and flip up to engage the PTO. Just to the right of the steering column, this is our throttle control. You always want to mow with these machines in full throttle. That's what this sticker says. It's slightly worn down. Always mow in full throttle. You want to, I like to engage the PTO at a low throttle. So start it up, let the throttle be low, engage the PTO, and then rev it up. I think that helps the PTO clutch last longer. And then just to the right here is our hydrostatic speed selector. Forward is up. The higher you go up, the faster you go. And backwards is reverse. The lower you go, the faster you go in reverse. And neutral is always in the center. When you push the brake pedal, it will return that lever to neutral. So let's talk a little bit about things to look for here. When you're looking at a machine, it's nice to know when the PTO clutch was replaced, especially on these electronic ones. They can be a little bit pricey. So in this case, I had the maintenance records. I know that this PTO clutch and switch are in good shape. It's nice to test drive them. You'll see that some of these, more so on the 70s models than the 80s models, but in the 1970s, on the hydrostatic models, when you're driving, you'll see what I call hydrostatic creep. So you'll set it at a certain speed, and you'll just keep going faster and faster and faster because there's some slop in that hydrostatic transmission or in the linkage that allows the hydrostatic valve to open more and more. That makes the machine go faster. I haven't seen that quite as much on this type of lever system. Seems to have a little bit better resistance than the other models where the lever was down here, an up and down lever like this. Obviously, the outside condition is important. This one you can see it hasn't been babied. It's got the sticker torn off there. It's got some additional stickers. But it is the original paint. It hasn't been repainted. No one's trying to hide any of the damage on it. I'm impressed that both rear lights are original and working. I'm impressed that it still has, I believe, the original tires and wheels. And this deck is really impressive. This is not the original deck, but it is a deck in really nice shape. All solid, no patches, no holes. Still has this top cover on it. Always look for that. You don't want open spindles. Not only does it let all the dirt and debris get in there, but it's also not safe. You want to look at the serial tag and see when this was manufactured, what the serial number is. This particular unit, this particular Cub Cadet was made in Cleveland in 1986. So it is the MTD manufactured Cub Cadet. But like I said, I'm not as worried about that as some people. Some people shy away from these models that weren't made by International Harvester. One of the concerns is always this rear transaxle. So you can see in there, this transaxle is an aluminum housing. And maybe not as solid as the cast iron Stihl ones, but I've never had an issue with them. They seem to do okay to me. Another additional expense, if you're looking at one, is a battery. This one did not have a good battery in it, so I had to spend some money on a new battery. But that's a minor expense if everything else is good. One of the impressive things is still having the original stickers. So if a machine still has the original stickers, which this one does, that's another good sign. You can see even here on the rims, we've got the original stickers. That's really hard to find. That was another thing that really impressed me about this machine. We have that original sticker, do not tow there. We've got the original height adjustment sticker. So even though these vinyl labels on the side aren't in great condition and the hood doesn't look perfect up on top, we're missing that nice shark fin hood ornament. It's still a pretty good machine in my opinion, just based on the other things I've seen. Does have the metal grill here, has the metal down here, has working headlights. We'll go ahead and open the hood up. Has a working hood hinge, which is important. There's another original sticker on the engine. Now this is one of the quiet engines. It's got all encased in a exhaust housing here, which is nice, but it does provide housing for things other than the exhaust. I find that the mice and critters like to go in there and make nests. Plastic gas tank. This one does have the gauge on it still. It's always good to inspect these. There's not many of them that still have this spring holding the two side panels in. That's a bonus if you can find one with that. A lot of them are just held together with wire. You want to check the condition of the mule drive. You can see this one's not horrible. It does still have the sticker on it, which is good. But I had to bend this back. This was bent. It's got an extra long threaded rod there. And you can see my pulley system is pretty far forward, which means that that belt's getting a little bit sloppy. It's been tightened up, and it's probably stretched out more than we'd like to have it. So maybe time to replace the belt, the PTO belt. That belt goes from the electronic PTO inside there that you can't see, down around this mule drive pulley, and back to the deck. Two other places you really want to check. I showed you, I put a brand new battery back here, but right behind the battery is where your trans oil is. So you want to go ahead and take that off and check not only the level of it, but what it looks like. You can see mine still looks like good hydraulic fluid. And then of course, you should always check the engine oil. Make sure it not only looks good, but it's at the proper level. So we're good there. Another thing to look for is the condition of the brakes. This particular model, that's one of the things that isn't great. When you push the brake pedal down, it's still really easy to move this machine around. So that means these rear disc brakes either need to be adjusted or replaced. But the nice thing about the hydrostatic is, except for parking on a hill, you do all of your slowing down using the hydrostatic drive. So you don't really use your brakes when you're driving, but when you're parked, it would be nice to have parking brakes. There is a parking brake feature on this pedal. When you push it down, you just slide this over, and that keeps the brakes engaged and also prevents you from being able to move the hydrostatic position lever. You don't find much information about these 1210s. They made plenty of them, just not a lot of information out there on them. Not many videos on YouTube. There are some good videos of some 1210s doing some snow plowing, doing a little bit of mowing. I'll tell you that this machine mows really nicely. It does have a really good deck on it. This is the 44-inch deck. The 12 horsepower engine is one of my favorites because it's got enough power to power the deck through some high grass, or if you're running a rototiller or pushing some snow. It's got enough power to do those things. But it's fairly quiet, and it's a nice running engine. It doesn't vibrate a lot. It's pretty smooth running engine, so that's what I like about the 12 horsepower and even the 14 horsepower Kohlers in these machines. Very smooth running engines. I found in my limited experience with the 16 horsepower that it's got a little bit more vibration to it. Another thing to mention about these machines, you do want to pay attention to those ISO mounts for the engine onto the frame. They are a wear item, and they do need replaced after time. If you leave them get too bad, the engine will shake a lot. It'll not only loosen up all your nuts and bolts, but it will also cause potential damage to your solid shaft that goes back to the transmission. I actually looked at one of these, not a 1210, but it was a 1000 model Quiet Line. Beautiful on the outside. The problem was those engine mounts were bad. Every nut and bolt on the machine was loose, and I was worried about other damage from that engine vibrating around so much. And that's another example of things you'll find out in a maintenance history. If you can find an original owner who has one of these tractors from the 70s or 80s, chances are good that they kept the maintenance log, and that's excellent to have. You can look back and see when did they have those mounts serviced or replace them, when did they change the oil, when did they change that electronic PTO, how often have they changed the drive belt from the PTO to the mid-mount mower deck, how often have they serviced the machine's hydraulic fluid and filter. Those are all important things to know, and it's good to have those records. So if you have someone who has those records, it means they've taken great care of the machine, and in those instances, I'm not as worried about that hour gauge. Another thing I really like about these old garden tractors, they were made to do work. They are heavy machines, steel, heavy big wheels and tires. This thing does a great job if you want to tow a cart behind you. Like I said, they do have ground engaging attachments. So these, in my mind, are much better than the machines of today, the lawnmowers of today. That's how I differentiate. I call the new machines of today lawnmowers, and these ones garden tractors. So I hope this video helped you out or entertained you in some way. If that's the case, please give us a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. If you are a Cub Cadet or garden tractor aficionado and want to leave your opinion down below on what things to look for if looking at a used machine like this, and your thoughts on Cub Cadet's 1970s versus 1980s, what to watch out for on that Quiet Line series, any of those tips down below, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear from you, and other people as they watch this video can learn a lot by reading down through the comments. I don't claim to know everything about these old machines, and a lot of you out there can really help people out by leaving those comments. Thanks for watching. If you're not already a subscriber, click that subscribe button. We'd love to have you follow us along here on Purple Collar Life. I have done previous videos that I'll put links to up above about a Cub Cadet 149 doing an oil change. Oil change on this is very similar to that oil change, so check those links out up above. Also a 149, how to start, operate, and mow. Again, process is very similar on this. We do not have the hydrostatic lift. We've got the manual deck lift, and we have an electronic PTO rather than a mechanical PTO. But those are the major differences, otherwise very similar. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again the next time.